Part 40. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 392. Okay, today's training is almost over. You can sit down and rest for half an hour before going back. As Nai-Chen's voice fell, the disciples who were still overworked breathed a sigh of relief. With soreness all over their bodies and weak legs, they soon sat on the ground unable to support themselves. Even those disciples who used to pay much attention to hygiene had no intention of paying attention to whether the ground was dirty or not. Excessive fatigue made them completely absent-minded, and they sat on the ground one after another in a short while. And soon, the disciples who scanned the surroundings soon found that the situation of others was almost exactly the same as their own. Sweating all over their bodies and being extremely weak, the geniuses of both the inner and outer gates were all in the same state. Not to mention doing anything else, they almost had no strength to sit down. But soon, they also noticed another problem. Strange, the spiritual energy in my body actually seems to have improved. Not only did someone exclaim in surprise, but almost everyone was stunned at the same time when they paid attention to their bodies. They were shocked to find that after only a few hours of training, not only their cultivation had improved, but their spiritual power had become abundant. They also felt that their eyes seemed to be brighter than before, and their bodies had been greatly purified. This kind of improvement was something they had never experienced even when they tried their best to seek adventures in the secret realm. I didn't expect that the training that senior brother Nai mentioned was so magical. For a while, the disciples who were still a little unbelieving couldn't help but stare at them one by one, because they were excited about the changes that had taken place in their bodies. Among them, Duanmu Yang's changes were particularly obvious. Inheriting his grandfather's strong physique, Duanmu Yang, who had just reached the early stage of Xianyuan realm, actually got a leap forward in this training, and his spiritual energy suddenly increased, reaching the middle stage of Xianyuan realm. Brother Duanmu's improvement speed is so fast. He has improved from the early stage of Xianyuan realm to the middle stage in a few hours. This speed is too fast. That's right. Although Brother Nai's method is extremely powerful, Brother Duanmu's comprehension is also terrible. He is simply an unattainable top seedling of immortality. This terrible speed of change immediately caused many people to cheer. Humph, I didn't expect that Nai-Chen's heart was so bad that he was almost black, but the cultivation method he said was still quite useful. Listening to the ups and downs around him, Duanmu Yang had long forgotten the embarrassing scene of calling Nai-Chen grandpa in front of everyone, and his heart suddenly became arrogant. Ha ha ha, you are right. I, Duanmu Yang, inherited my grandfather's physique. I am a rare talent among millions of people. As long as I use this method, it won't take long for me to rapidly improve my strength. Not only will my cultivation level surpass Nai-Chen, but my girlfriend will definitely be better than his. Ha 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 ha. A burst of wild laughter made the disciples around speechless. But because Duanmu Yang was indeed talented and had a good mentality, they could only praise him awkwardly. That's right, senior brother Duanmu is amazing. Senior brother Duanmu is awesome. Ha ha ha, you guys just talk nonsense. Hearing the flattery, Duanmu Yang became even more excited, and he was so arrogant that he almost floated up. Even the trembling eyes he had before when looking at Nai-Chen now carried a hint of provocation and complacency. But at this moment, a cold chill came with the afterglow of the setting sun. The cold air clearly carried a sense of oppression, and in an instant, all the noisy sounds were silenced. Looking towards the direction of Tianyun Hall, the disciples no longer dared to have any jokes in their expressions, and all of them were solemn and respectful. There was a bit of beauty in the coldness, and a hint of solemnity in the elegance. The beautiful figure in the world was wearing a light blue phoenix skirt fluttering in the air. Just looking at it from a distance was enough to make anyone feel awe and dare not have the slightest blasphemous thoughts. Many disciples couldn't help but feel a boiling in their hearts. Before the training, many people heard from Elder Wang that the Empress might come to inspect in person today. It was because of this that they trained so hard. But they didn't expect that the Empress would actually leave Tianyun Hall and come here in person. You know, the Empress almost always lives in Tianyun Hall on weekdays. Except for the elders and holy envoys in the sect, almost no one is qualified to meet the Empress. Even after so many years in Tianyun Palace, they had seen Chu Qingyu very few times. It was such a great honor to have the Empress come to inspect the training in person. Compared with the improvement of strength, the joy in the hearts of the disciples at this moment was far more than that. Even if they dared not look directly at the cold and majestic figure, many people could not help but feel a throbbing in their hearts. After all the people present were male disciples. Even though they knew very well that the Empress was a great existence that they could not reach, they could not hide some uncontrollable fantasies in their hearts. The skirt swayed like ripples on the water, just like the heartbeats in many people's hearts. But soon, the disciples noticed a very strange thing. At this moment, the Empress was holding a white and green bowl in her hand. Moreover, the usually cold and majestic Empress now took every step carefully with the bowl, as if she was very worried that the contents would spill out. Wait, this bowl, couldn't it be? In an instant, almost everyone suddenly remembered. Tianyun Hall has always had a clear division of labor, and because of this, even kitchen utensils are divided into various styles. For example, ordinary white porcelain bowls are used to hold rice, and blue porcelain bowls are used to hold ice water. And this green and white bowl is used to hold mung bean water to prevent disciples from fainting due to excessive practice in the hot summer. These bowls were originally kept in the kitchen and were not taken out when not in use. But now it is autumn, and the hot summer season has long passed, and the kitchen should not make mung bean water anymore. In other words, this bowl of mung bean water is very likely made by the Empress. When thinking of this absurd idea, many people were stunned in an instant. After all, it was hard to believe that the cold and majestic Empress would make mung bean water by herself. But they soon noticed in astonishment that the direction the Empress was walking was towards the crowd. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 393. The setting sun slants down, reflecting light on the surface of the mung bean porridge. As the Empress gradually approached, many disciples were surprised to notice that the bowl of mung bean porridge in the Empress' hand turned dark purple, and besides the mung beans, there were also many unknown and weird objects floating around. Completely different from the Empress's beauty, the appearance of this mung bean porridge is really ugly. But no matter how the mung bean porridge looks, what everyone is paying attention to is another issue. What the Empress is holding is actually mung bean porridge. Originally, just thinking that the Empress came here for inspection was enough to make all the disciples excited. But the current situation has completely exceeded their understanding. It is absolutely impossible for the Empress to walk here carrying mung bean porridge for no reason, that is to say. Empress, who do you really want to give mung bean porridge to? In an instant, everyone seemed to feel a wave of unbridled waves. No one would believe such a thing unless they saw it with their own eyes. After all, let alone the Empress, even if a senior sister came here with mung bean porridge, it would cause an explosive boil. The fact that the Empress came here with mung bean porridge was tantamount to a big news that could make the entire Tianyun Palace fall into great astonishment. How is it possible? Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the male disciples simply couldn't believe what they saw in front of them. After all, the Empress' cold arrogance has long been known to the world. Not only did he write down Tao Lun Wu Yu Lun with his own hands. I remember that there was once a strong saint emperor who spoke rudely to the Empress and tried to pursue her. In the end, he was killed by the Empress' sword in an instant. Even though she is ranked second in the allure list and her beauty is known to the world, no monk dares to be disrespectful. Even their disciples would not dare to raise their heads and look directly at the Empress. But such an aloof and arrogant empress, today, actually served mung bean porridge with her own hands. How is that possible? What's more important is that when the disciples saw it with their own eyes, they didn't know whether it was stained by the fiery red sunset or because there were ripples in the empress's heart. There was actually a slight drunken blush on those beautiful and cold cheeks, which made many people pause for a long time. It took a long time to finally react. So, who is the empress giving the mung bean porridge to? Even though Chu Qingyu slowly approached, no one dared to come forward. They just looked at each other in astonishment, but at the same time they showed an expression of disbelief. Is it Elder Wang? Looking at the deepest part, where the white-haired Elder Wang was standing high up with Nai Chen, many people had the same thought at the same time. After all, no matter what, they didn't think the empress would really deliver mung bean porridge to her disciples. After all, there were so many disciples present, and with the empress always fair attitude towards dealing with things, it was naturally impossible for her to give preferential treatment to one of them. Therefore, it is most likely that there is only Elder Wang. But looking at Elder Wang's old and hunched eyes, he felt a little bit different. Then, could it be? Yes, of course it's probably me. Among the crowd, Duan Wang suddenly raised his head triumphantly. The high chest seemed to be full of self-confidence. Why did senior brother Duan Mu say this? For a moment, there was some silence. After hearing the question, Duan Wang seemed even more complacent. Humph, then you still need to say it? Although there are so many disciples present, I am the only one with the strongest talent and strength right now. Not only did he understand the training method Nai Chen said, but he even directly improved from the early stage of the Xianyuan realm to the middle stage. This small level of improvement is enough to show how terrifying my talent is. The Empress must have sensed my rapid progress when she came this time, and wanted to reward me, the future immortal seedling of Tianyuan Palace, ha ha ha. Disciples. Why don't you believe it? Although it sounds a bit impossible, no matter how you put it, I feel that I have the best chance here. Noticing the sneering looks on the male disciples around him, Duan Mu Yang was completely dumbfounded. But while he was trying his best to argue, Chu Qingyu's figure walked by. Those clear autumn eyes swept over the disciples, and there seemed to be no emotion in them. A burst of fragrance with a slightly cold aroma swept across the room, and Chu Qingyu passed by the crowd of disciples without any pause in her footsteps. It was obvious that none of the people present were worth the attention of the Empress. That flawless back was still walking slowly deeper. And Duan Wang, who was so brazen and self-righteous just now, was completely dumbfounded. I was so embarrassed that I wanted to find a crack in the ground and crawl into it. It was obvious that the Empress had never noticed him at all. Even when he passed by just now, he didn't even bother to glance at himself. Eyes focused on Duan Wang. Ever since his ancestor forced him to call him Grandpa Nai Chen, Duan Wang had spent a lot of effort to finally regain some of his dignity. But I never expected that not long after I had just recovered my dignity would be pressed into the dirt and trampled on repeatedly. Those eyes were cutting on his body like knives. Although the male disciples who looked at Duan Mu Yang didn't say a word, their expressions that seemed to be smiling but not smiling were the real killing weapons. Oh, God, how can you be so unfair? I thought the direction the Empress was walking towards was me. Duan Mu Yang seemed to be crying and grieving in his heart. But his eyes were sunken and slightly desperate, but suddenly he froze. Wait, if the Empress was not coming for me, then who was coming in this direction? Not only Duan Mu Yang's eyes, but in just a moment, all the disciples' eyes were completely attracted by the figure of the Empress who walked through the crowd without saying a word. Soon, they clearly saw that the Empress had completely shuttled through the crowd and walked to a higher place. And there were only the two people who were responsible for leading the training of the disciples just now, Elder Wang and Nai Chen. Haha, Training disciples is my duty. The Empress doesn't actually have to do this kind of thing. I will always remember the Empress's care for me. Looking at Chu Qingyu's gradually approaching figure, Elder Wang suddenly felt flattered. Having served as the Grand Elder of Tianyuan Palace for so many years, he never thought that this day would come. At this moment, Elder Wang even suddenly felt that all his efforts over the years were completely worth it. Empress, then it is better to obey than to be respectful. I will. However, before Elder Wang approached, he was stunned in the same place. Because the Empress who was about to walk in front of him did not stop, but turned around and walked towards Nai Chen with the bowl of mung bean porridge. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 394. This bowl of mung bean porridge was cooked by me personally. The weather is very hot. You, drink it? Under the attention of the crowd, Chu Qingyu handed the mung bean porridge to Nai Chen. With Nai Chen's cultivation, he would not sweat even under the sun. But even so, Chu Qingyu still gently wiped Nai Chen's forehead with her cool palm. And there was a bit of touching concern in her eyes. As the setting sun shone down, even Nai Chen didn't know whether the blush on the beautiful cheeks came from the shyness of the Empress or from this beautiful sunset. At this moment, Nai Chen couldn't help but stand there in a daze. He obviously didn't expect the Empress to give him mung bean porridge in public. After all, not long ago, the Empress was very shy and secretly concealed the relationship between the two, for fear that others would know. The first to know the inside story, the leader of Mount Imei and the Saint of Flowers, were almost silenced. But now, the Empress put down her busy work and came to deliver the mung bean porridge in person. Her eyelashes drooped slightly, and her eyes were filled with a bit of shyness that could not be concealed. For a moment, even Nai Chen couldn't help but be moved. After all, the Empress's cuteness at this moment was hard for anyone to resist. Wait, there's something wrong with this mung bean porridge. But just as Nai Chen's consciousness became a little hazy and he wanted to reach out to take the mung bean porridge, he suddenly noticed the appearance of the mung bean porridge in the white and green porcelain bowl. The viscous liquid had completely turned dark purple, and the mung beans were distributed irregularly. Some mung beans looked like noses, and some looked like bloody mouths, as if they were arranged to look like a hideous devil. And the condensed demon face seemed to be constantly opening its big mouth and emitting a cold laugh. Ha ha ha, drink me, as long as you drink me, I can let you quickly complete the journey of life and see the paradise, ha ha ha. Nai Chen. He suddenly recalled the Empress's cooking skills. The Empress was very smart, but cooking was fatal. If I really drink this bowl of mung bean porridge, even if I have reached the realm of the great emperor, I am afraid I will ascend to heaven on the spot. Forget it, wife, I won't drink it. Nai Chen waved his hands repeatedly. Looking at the mung bean porridge handed over by the Empress herself, many male disciples finally couldn't hide their emotions. One after another, their eyes gathered, full of jealousy, anger, helplessness, and countless emotions. Even the disciples who were grateful to Nai Chen just now had obvious deep jealousy in their eyes at this moment. Hate to the point of itching. They could never have imagined that the Empress, who usually did not even dare to look up at them and always maintain the dignity of a cold and arrogant emperor, would actually give Nai Chen mung bean porridge. Why is it him, not me? Nai Chen, it's Nai Chen again. Ahem. This emperor came here because he made a bet with the Saint of Flowers, and then chose a disciple to give mung bean porridge. As if he had noticed the thoughts of those disciples, Chu Qingyu coughed lightly and explained. But this voice, which was completely different from the past, and the kind gesture of handing mung bean porridge to Nai Chen personally, could not convince anyone. Especially Duan Muhong, who just thought that the Empress was going to give mung bean porridge to him, was so jealous that he wanted to bite his teeth to pieces, and he wanted to cry at the same time. Damn it, why did it have to be Nai-Chen again? There are so many disciples present, it doesn't make sense that it would be Nai-Chen. Is it because Nai-Chen has the best qualifications and the highest realm? God, why are you so unfair? Duan Muyang's nose was sore, and he almost cried. You'd better drink quickly, I have to leave quickly. Even Chu Qingyu felt that something was wrong with these disciples. There was no way, after all, even Elder Wang, who had been the supreme elder for many years, had never seen such a scene. Cook mung bean porridge by hand and give it to Nai-Chen in front of all the disciples. Even though she had been mentally prepared for a while, Chu Qingyu still felt a little embarrassed. She had to turn her back to the crowd and lower her head slightly. The excuse she made up just now was obviously full of loopholes, and she had to act as quickly as possible. As if noticing that Nai-Chen didn't want to drink it, Chu Qingyu said seriously. This bowl of porridge was cooked by me personally. Ahem, of course I know what you mean, my wife, but the problem is. Nai-Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Just looking at the color and appearance of the mung bean porridge, it would be strange if it wasn't cooked by the Empress herself. In this world, there is absolutely no one else who can cook porridge that can poison the Emperor to death, except the Empress. Wife, forget it. Nai-Chen tried to push the mung bean porridge away. Even if it was delivered by the Empress herself, it was very sweet. But his life was at stake, and compared to his own life, Nai-Chen had to refuse this bowl of porridge. But he made up his mind, and just as he cruelly pushed half of the green and white porcelain bowl, Nai-Chen suddenly noticed that Chu Qingyu's eyes had changed. You don't want to drink it? There seemed to be a light flashing in those bright eyes, pitiful. Even if she didn't say anything extra, the disappointment on her beautiful face was enough to move anyone's heart. Even Nai-Chen's eyes froze for a moment. Chu Qingyu had tried to take the mung bean porridge gently and wanted to take it away disappointedly. Haha, of course not. How could I not drink the mung bean porridge sent by my wife? In an instant, Nai-Chen's expression changed drastically. There was no way. If I didn't spoil my wife, who else could? Nai-Chen smiled up to the sky. Although his laughter was hearty, it seemed to carry a hint of sadness. Then, he took the green and white porcelain bowl back from Chu Qingyu without hesitation. Facing the mung bean porridge that looked like a devil, he took a sip without hesitation. What a man! Although it was just this one sip, Nai-Chen couldn't help but want to praise himself. But as he drank this small mouthful of mung bean porridge, which was as big as a fingernail, Nai-Chen's stomach began to churn, as if a laughing devil was raging wildly. Just this one sip. Although Chu Qingyu was very confident in her cooking skills, she was still a little confused when she saw Nai-Chen took the bowl away after taking only a small sip. Well, I'll drink the rest later. Thank you, my wife, it tastes really good. Nai-Chen gave a thumbs up in approval. But a string of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 395. I said my cooking skills are better than my cultivation talent. When the locals were refining elixirs before, those supreme elders didn't dare to eat them. It seems that you are more knowledgeable. Chu Qingyu was obviously very happy to receive such high praise. There was a playful smile on the corners of her proud mouth. Then I will leave first. You have worked hard to teach the disciples. Remember not to be too tired. After a concerned reminder, Chu Qingyu turned around with satisfaction, stepped lightly, and returned to Tianyun Hall. But behind her, Nai-Chen, who had just finished a mouthful of porridge, coughed twice as if he was seriously injured, and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Others pamper their wives for money, but pampering your wife is simply fatal. The Empress, who looks extremely cold on the outside, is always silly and cute at times. Fortunately, I have reached the realm of the great emperor, otherwise just drinking that small sip would be fatal. At this moment, Nai Chen completely understood what it meant to be with the emperor like a tiger. If it were someone else, they would have lost their lives, not to mention spoiling their wives. However, the disciples who were watching the scene did not know how terrible the poison contained in the bowl of mung bean porridge was. Recalling the scene of the empress personally delivering mung bean porridge and caring about Nai Chen, they were so jealous that their eyes turned green. "Brother Nai, why don't you take a rest? I will train others tomorrow. Maybe the person the empress will deliver mung bean porridge to will be me. I also want to drink the mung bean porridge cooked by the empress herself. Brother Nai, please give me a sip." The many male disciples who begged desperately seemed to be about to cry. "Go away, go back and rest quickly, and continue training tomorrow." However, Nai Chen waved his hand in disdain and refused without hesitation. Originally, he only planned to train this group of disciples for one day, but the empress actually delivered mung bean porridge personally, which made Nai Chen soon plan to train for a few more days. He was already looking forward to whether the empress would continue to send gifts. "Brother Nai is too much. I feel like my soul has been hit by 10,000 critical hits." Many male disciples who have been single for many years felt that they could not stop crying, but it was a pity that they were now facing Nai Chen. Even if they were so angry that their teeth were itching, they thought that they could not beat him at all. "I don't believe it. Anyway, we have to train tomorrow. Today must be just an accident. Could it be that the empress can really continue to send gifts? Yes, the empress must have sent mung bean porridge out of concern for all of us, but she couldn't make so many copies at the same time, so she gave it to Brother Nai alone. This kind of thing will definitely not happen again tomorrow." As if there were always tears in their eyes, the disciples had to look sad and dispersed helplessly, anxiously waiting for the start of tomorrow's training. "Then I will take my leave first." Even Elder Wang's old face twitched slightly, and then he said goodbye and left speechlessly. With the afterglow of the setting sun, the old figure looked even more pitiful. He improved his strength, but severely hurt his young heart. The sky above the Tianyun Palace seemed to be filled with wailing. After a while, Nai Chen was the only one left in the vast open space. Looking at the mung bean porridge in his hand, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile helplessly and put it away. He naturally didn't dare to drink the mung bean porridge that looked like a gloomy and terrifying devil, but if he kept it, he might be able to use it as the black history of the empress one day. Then what's next? Nai Chen swept the Tianyun Palace with his spiritual consciousness, and soon sensed that Chu Qingyu was still writing something at the desk, preparing for the conference that would be held soon. That serious look made Nai Chen a little embarrassed to disturb him. Soon, Nai Chen turned his gaze to the library. It has been almost a year since he came to Lanchuan continent. Although he was already familiar with the basics of this continent, Nai Chen did not know much about other spiritual realms like the underworld. The great emperor was once the most powerful existence in this world. Until the emperor appeared in the world, Nai Chen clearly recognized it. There are more powerful existences above the great emperor. In addition to the other spiritual realms outside the Lanchuan continent, it is more likely that there are more powerful people than we know. If we only keep our eyes on the present, it is tantamount to being self-contained and completely ignoring the possible crisis. The appearance of Emperor Qiu Yan is an example. For unknown existences, the current strength of the Lanchuan continent cannot face them head-on. Nai Chen's face gradually became solemn. The last ray of sunset has dissipated in the sky, and he walked into the Sutra Pavilion with the dark night. Ding! Congratulations to the host for entering the state of enlightenment. With the sound from the system, countless books in the Sutra Pavilion slowly opened to Nai Chen at the same time. The countless words on the book turned into dots of light and floated out as if they had a mind, and condensed into a golden river, rushing towards him. The golden river converged into Nai Chen's brain, and the records and background contained in it were all absorbed. The books stored in this area are not skills or secret books, and there is no grade to measure them. On weekdays, no disciples would even bother to check them. Because of this, very few people would pay attention to the things recorded in these books. Some are strange stories, some are ancient unofficial histories without concrete basis, and some are personal biographies of great emperors in history. But others record the spiritual realms outside Lanchuan continent. It is said that there are 3,000 worlds, and Lanchuan continent is not the only spiritual realm. In the vast universe, there are also countless worlds like Lanchuan continent. Some spiritual realms, because their spiritual energy has not weakened due to the changes in the ancient times, have given birth to countless supreme powers. The strong golden light is reflected in the entire Sutra Pavilion, and countless records are also transformed into river memories in Nichien's mind. Time passed slowly, and Nichien did not make any extra movements. He just quietly scanned the books in front of him, as if he was comprehending the mystery in them. The stars flickered and the moonlight swayed. I don't know how long it took, and finally, Nichien slowly opened his eyes. There was also a layer of brilliant golden light in those eyes. Even at this moment, even the moonlight outside seemed a little pale. Records gathered from countless records. In addition to the countless spiritual realms that exist in the vast universe, there are two completely different existences. One is the place where only those who break through the realm of calamity can finally ascend, the fairyland. The other is the Nine Netherworld Palace that controls countless underworlds on the continent and can even be called the center of reincarnation. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 396. Nine Netherworld. This name made Nichien stunned for a moment. He had never heard of this name before. But looking through the thousands of books about other worlds in the library, it seems that there are always clues about the Nine Netherworld in many books. So this underworld, which is in charge of many underworlds and is the center of reincarnation, is very likely to be real. There are also the 8 saints of the underworld and the Hades related to it. But if that's the case, why didn't the Nine Netherworld do anything when the disaster happened in the underworld? Nichien frowned slightly, feeling a little strange. The space leading to other starfields is extremely difficult to tear. It seems that few people know about the news of the Nine Netherworld. Countless books in the library exude a faint golden light. Time passes slowly while he is lost in thought. The night passes, the sun rises, and a fish belly white appears in the distant sky. Accompanied by the sound of birds singing, the second day has arrived. After coming to his senses, Nichien realized that he had only been thinking for a while, but it was already the next day. Putting down the book in his hand and taking a long breath, he walked out of the sutra library. In the early morning, the birds chirped particularly gracefully, and there was still a bit of cold fog on the top of the Tianyun Palace. But it was completely different from the past. At this time, a group of male disciples had already stood in the open area in front of the statue of the Empress, waiting for Nichien to arrive. In addition to wanting to improve their strength through training, they wanted to verify whether the Empress would really send mung bean porridge to Nichien this time. Absolutely impossible, even if the Empress came to inspect today, the mung bean porridge would only be given to others, and would never be given to Nichien again. That's right, I believe in the Empress. With faith in their hearts, the disciples all looked expectant. At this moment, they noticed Nichien coming from a distance. Looking at the different expressions of the disciples, Nichien suddenly showed a subtle smile. I didn't expect you all got up so early. In this case, let's do some warm-up exercises. Well, as a warm-up exercise, everyone should run 10,000 meters at full speed first. 10,000 meters. Instantly, all the disciples present were dumbfounded. It was outrageous enough to run 5,000 meters at one time yesterday. Even as a cultivator, Many people had backaches and did not recover all night. I never thought that Nai Chen would start with 10,000 meters. Brother Nai, you are taking revenge. Brother Nai, please be merciful, this is not a warm-up exercise at all. There were waves of lamentations, but it seemed that Nai Chen's thoughts could not be shaken at all. With sad faces, everyone had to start the 10,000-meter running exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4. After a while, the inspiring slogans rang out again above the Tianyun Palace. But although the slogans were loud, many disciples had completely lost their enthusiasm of yesterday. Because the pain of that bowl of mung bean porridge was deeply engraved in everyone's heart. Damn it, yesterday must have been just an accident. If the Empress came today, she might have given it to me. I don't know how many people shouted in their hearts while running with sweat dripping down their backs. Strange, why do I feel that the eyes of these kids today are more determined than each other, just like they are going to fight to the death? Even Elder Wang, who was just woken up by the slogans, was shocked. Although 10,000 meters seems to be something that can be said casually, it is not easy for even the cultivators who have practiced to run. With the dawn of the morning, when they ran past 5,000 meters, many disciples began to sweat and pant with exhaustion. It seems that the warm-up effect is quite good. While these male disciples were running, a figure slowly approached and stared at the scene in front of them. The person who came was a short-haired woman. The short black hair fell on her shoulders, and she looked about 20 years old. She was wearing a simple yellow gown, with a dagger hanging from her waist, and her appearance was quite good. But as she looked at the disciples who were panting while exercising, a mocking sneer appeared on her face. Humph, I've heard for a long time that the disciples of Tianyun Hall are all immortal seedlings selected from all over the world. Not only are they outstanding in qualifications, but their comprehension is also excellent. I thought that with the extreme comprehension of the disciples of Tianyun Hall, they would come up with some amazing means of cultivation, but I didn't expect that it would be running to exercise. Haha, as a cultivator, wasting time doing this kind of exercise that only mortals can do is really ridiculous. So the disciples of Tianyun Hall, who are called immortal seedlings, have only this much comprehension. The sneer came, and many disciples stopped immediately. In that playful voice, anyone could hear the bad feeling. But when they saw the woman, many disciples showed a trace of surprise, and the anger between their brows due to the mockery just now was instantly restrained. If anyone else dared to say such words in front of all the disciples, I am afraid that they would have aroused public anger. But the identity of this woman is very special. Genyu. This woman had established a marriage contract with Emperor Jinming many years ago, and agreed to marry Emperor Jinming hundreds of years later. At that time, Emperor Jinming's parents and her parents raised their glasses to make an agreement and made an engagement, and even the two children were satisfied with each other. But they never thought that many years later, although Emperor Jinming's strength increased rapidly and he was respected as an emperor. But because of the side effects of understanding the 10,000 swords domain, he could only remain a virgin. As for marrying his Taoist partner as agreed, it naturally became impossible. But even so, Genyu still stayed with Emperor Jinming, trying to wait for Emperor Jinming to break through his cultivation one day and get rid of his virginity before marrying her. After an unknown amount of time, Genyu had been loyal to Emperor Jinming for 100 years and had made many contributions. Although Emperor Jinming had not been able to break through the shackles of his virginity, Genyu had always had a lofty status because of her special status. After all, although she is not yet, as long as Emperor Jinming succeeds in breaking through one day, she can become the Taoist partner of the emperor. This special status also made Genyu, who was not strong, receive a lot of special treatment. After all, the Taoist companion of a great emperor should not be easily provoked. Such a unique voice also made Genyu arrogant and did not take other people seriously at all. After all, looking at the world, How many people other than himself are qualified to be the Taoist companion of the emperor? Oh? What do you mean, miss? However, following Gen Yu's rather smug mocking expression, Nai Chen also looked at her coldly. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 397. Strange, that look. Gen Yu, who had always been treated well, had never seen such a look before. When Nai Chen's eyes shot at her, she didn't do anything, but she suddenly felt a chill on her back. In that look, there was a chill in her heart. How is it possible? Gen Yu was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect to feel such an oppressive feeling. Although she had heard that Nai Chen's strength and talent were extremely terrifying, he should not have reached the realm of the emperor, and was far inferior to Jin Ming. Gen Yu, who had always been arrogant, actually felt a trace of fear at this time. But soon, she hurriedly shook her head to dispel her worries. With the identity of being the future Taoist partner of Emperor Jin Ming, Gen Yu had received countless respects and preferential treatments, and she had never been stared at so coldly. What's more, no matter how strong this Nai Chen was, could he be better than Jin Ming, who had been in the emperor realm for a long time? Thinking of this, Gen Yu's fear just now was not only swept away. Because of Nai Chen's actions, the hostility seemed to be even stronger. Gen Yu laughed mockingly. Of course, my meaning is very simple. Today Jin Ming plans to come to Tianyun Hall in person, so I will let the news be passed here before him. But I didn't expect to see such a ridiculous scene. There are actually many people who say that the disciples of Tianyun Hall are not only outstanding in talent, but also have their own way of cultivation. As a result, your way of cultivation is actually running. Haha, physical exercise is the most useless way of cultivation, which is rarely used even by third-rate sects. I didn't expect that Tianyun Hall, where the dignified empress sits, would actually use such a ridiculous method of cultivation. If this gets out, it will really be a laughing stock, ha ha ha. Gen Yu's laughter was obviously full of sarcasm. When she called Emperor Jin Ming, she directly called him Jin Ming. It seems that she tried her best to show the close relationship between the two, so that Nai Chen could recognize his identity. The implication seems to be as if she is saying, I am very likely to become the Taoist partner of the emperor, do you dare to touch me? Make a fool of yourself? Haha, how can you be sure that this kind of training method is not beneficial to cultivation? More importantly, do you think you are qualified to judge the disciples of my Tianyun palace? However, Nai Chen's cold voice was merciless. From the whispers of the disciples just now, he had already roughly understood the identity of the short-haired woman who suddenly appeared. A possible future Taoist partner of Emperor Jinming? Not to mention that Emperor Jinming's body was so difficult to stand up, Gen Yu probably didn't know that compared to her, a candidate for the powerful Taoist partner of the emperor, the one standing in front of her was a genuine Taoist partner of the emperor, a part-time emperor. What? You actually said I'm not qualified? Hearing Nai Chen's words, Gen Yu was instantly angry. Relying on her identity, over the years, no one dared to disrespect her even if she went anywhere. But Nai Chen's aggressive tone simply didn't take her seriously at all. Yes, it's just that you may become the Taoist partner of the great emperor. Is your self-confidence due to the body of the great emperor Jinming, which is not even as strong as that of an 8-year-old child? Nai Chen walked forward with a smile and completely returned the ridicule. What did you say? According to the rules of my engagement with Jinming, I am considered your senior. Could it be that you still want to offend the majesty of the great emperor Jinming? At this moment, Gen Yu was obviously completely enraged. For so long, even if she did anything, She had never encountered such a provocation. Oh, since you like to talk about seniority so much, it means that the real Taoist partner of the great emperor can beat you. However, after bringing up the great emperor Jinming as a backer, not only did Nai Chen not show any fear, but the indifference in his eyes became even colder. Brother Nai, this person has a special identity and has a deep relationship with the great emperor Jinming. You should pay attention to peace and don't argue with her. Even the disciples on the side whispered to dissuade him, worried that the situation would continue to evolve. How dare you talk to me like that? At this moment, Genyu was completely enraged, staring at Nai Chen with eyes full of anger. Humph, if you are really a great emperor with the same status as me, you may be qualified to argue. But do you think you are worthy? Although I have heard that the empress seems to treat you differently, the empress is such a cold and arrogant person, and she must just think that you have some pretty good qualifications. Do you really think that the empress is really interested in you and has the same status as me? Humph, it's really a fool's dream. You dare to prove it and contradict me, today I will. Pa. However, Genyu was only halfway through his words when a crisp slap echoed in the air. The loudness of the slap was so loud that almost all the disciples present could hear it clearly. A red slap mark was also left on Genyu's arrogant face. The pain quickly spread, causing her eyes to widen in shock. The wide eyes stared at Nai Chen, filled with anger and disbelief. Genyu never thought that he would be beaten. And even after she brought up the identity of Emperor Jinming, she was completely ignored by the other party and was not taken seriously at all. In these years, even though Emperor Jinming did not have any extra feelings for her, but relying on the identity of the emperor's Taoist partner, Genyu was arrogant and domineering, and never took other people seriously. But she never thought that she would be slapped hard here. Moreover, in front of so many people. All her face seemed to be completely lost at this moment. Anger had spread completely, and Genyu was almost going crazy. Don't you know my identity? Jinming and I are. Pa. However, before she finished speaking, accompanied by a sharp palm wind, a louder slap hit her face directly. The force of the slap was completely different from the previous one, and there was no room for resistance. Under the sweep of the powerful force, Genyu's body flew out suddenly, and even turned twice in the air before falling hard to the ground. With a loud bang, Genyu was thrown to the ground and covered in dust, and even felt that her bones were about to break. What was even more uncomfortable was the burning pain on her cheek, which was even more red and hot. Waves of tearing and severe pain came, making her want to roll on the ground with gritted teeth. It hurt so much, you actually dared to attack me. Genyu's eyes were filled with anger and fear. At this moment, in the distance, several footsteps were slowly approaching. Emperor Jinming, here he comes. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 398. Cool. Seeing Genyu being slapped hard, he fell into a state of disgrace and embarrassment. For a time, many disciples felt a sense of relief in their hearts. But soon they became worried. Because along with the footsteps, everyone could clearly see it. In the distance, Emperor Jinming was walking towards here step by step. Although the figure is as short as a boy of several years old, the oppressive feeling of the emperor that he exudes is genuine. Even though Emperor Jinming's own strength is among the weaker ones in the imperial realm, it is still far beyond their reach. Senior brother Nai. Many disciples looked at Nai Chen worriedly, and some even wanted to run to Tianyun Palace to report the matter to the Empress and ask her to protect Nai Chen. But they soon discovered that after giving this possible future Emperor Taoist companion a hard slap, not only did Nai Chen not show any fear at all, but he clapped his hands with great satisfaction. Not bad, not bad. Although he looks a bit ugly, this slap is still quite loud. Nai Chen stretched his muscles and took a step forward, almost as if he was going to slap him again. Ugly? You actually called me ugly? His face hurt as if it was being burned by fire. Upon hearing these words, Genyu was so angry that he almost fainted. Although her appearance is not as good as those who have the most beautiful talents, she is definitely quite good. As long as she is not compared with someone as beautiful as Empress Kingyu, who is at the peak of her appearance, there is absolutely no way that she has anything to do with the word ugly. Who would have thought that Nai Chen would actually use the word ugly to insult her face to face? Genyu, who had always been pampered, was so angry that his body was shaking a little, and he wanted to stand up and fight Nai Chen directly. But at this moment, she finally noticed the approaching figure of Emperor Jinming. Although that body was not even as high as her waist, it instantly made Genyu burn with hope. Okay, just wait and pay for your disrespect. After giving Nai Chen a vicious look, Genyu staggered and struggled, trying to run towards Emperor Jinming. Great Emperor, you must avenge me. Before Emperor Jinming, she didn't dare to use affectionate names directly. However, he showed a pitiful posture and staggered to the side of Emperor Jinming in a pretentious manner. What's wrong with you? Looking at Genyu's appearance, Emperor Jinming couldn't help but frown. He originally wanted Genyu to be the first to inform the Empress or the elders of the sect about his coming to Tianyun Palace. But he never imagined that Genyu would be beaten like this. Looking at her red and swollen face, it was obvious that she had been slapped hard. Over the years, although I have been unable to fulfill my original engagement, I have not shown much interest in Genyu. But because of the agreement he made, Genyu, who was under his protection, had never been bullied. Why has it become like this now? That's him. Not only did he insult me, he also didn't take you and the Empress seriously. As if he had found a savior, Genyu immediately pointed at Nai Chen. His widened eyes were full of anger, as if he wanted to take revenge for everything. Oh! How dare you do this to you? I want to see what it is. Ahem, it turns out to be Nai Chen. Emperor Jinming, who was just halfway through his hard-on, followed the direction Genyu pointed, but his voice suddenly changed. Haha, we say goodbye to the Emperor's mausoleum. Brother Nai Chen and I haven't seen each other for a long time. It was completely different from what Genyu thought that he would vent his anger on his behalf. Not only was there no hint of anger in Emperor Jinming's voice. Actually, it even seems to be a bit flattering. How is that possible? Even Genyu was completely stunned. Great Emperor, this Nai Chen slapped me with his own hands. He doesn't take you seriously at all. You must not let him go. It seemed that she was worried that Emperor Jinming would be so scrupulous that Empress Kingyu would not dare to take action without permission, so she quickly added. And the Empress only values Nai Chen slightly. She wrote on the uselessness of Taoist companions and prohibited her disciples from falling in love. It is absolutely impossible for the cold and arrogant Empress to have any feelings for an ordinary disciple of his. Fart. But Emperor Jinming didn't believe a word of what she said. To say that he envied and hated Nai Chen more than anyone else. Seeing Nai Chen's intimate behavior with the Empress in the Imperial Mausoleum, he easily won the game against the Chess Emperor. The most outrageous thing is that he doesn't know how to learn his own unique skill of tens of thousands of swords, and he doesn't need to remain a child. These things were enough to make his teeth itch with jealousy. However, Emperor Jinming, who knew part of the secret, did not dare to move at all. Few people knew the secret, but he knew clearly that the relationship between Nai Chen and the Empress was far from as simple as it seemed. Even though he was not willing to accept it at all, until now, the subtle smile of the flower saint in the Imperial Mausoleum was still fresh in his memory. Please pay attention, Nai Chen and the Empress do not have a superficial relationship as you simply seem. Feeling a little chill in his heart, Emperor Jinming could only grit his teeth and raised his eyebrows in front of Genyu. How is it possible? With the Empress's coldness and arrogance, it should be impossible for her to be interested in anyone. What's more, he is still a disciple of Tianyun Palace from the demon sect. Hearing this, Genyu was unwilling to believe it, and even more unwilling to believe that she would be beaten by Nai Chen for nothing. When has she ever been so angry? Wait, as long as it can be proved that Nai Chen has no support from the Empress, maybe the Emperor can avenge me. After all, without the help of the Empress, he is just an ordinary disciple. Just as she was about to fall into despair, Genyu suddenly had an idea in her mind. This idea made her excited instantly. Yes, as long as there is evidence. Genyu looked around hurriedly. At this moment, as the sun gradually rose to the sky, she suddenly noticed a figure walking out of Tianyun Hall. The cold figure in a light blue phoenix skirt could be seen at a glance. Empress Qingyu was coming here. God is helping me. Sure enough, even God is on my side. Seeing Chu Qingyu's figure, Genyu's heart was instantly filled with excitement and excitement. After all, as long as you observe the communication between the Empress and Nai Chen, you can easily see the relationship between the two. Soon, I will be able to expose Nai Chen's bullying and hit him back. However, Genyu quickly noticed that he was extremely excited. At this moment, the Qingyu Empress seemed to be holding something in her hand, and her expression was slightly different from the cold and arrogant look that made people feel awe in the past. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 399. Strange, what exactly is the Empress trying to do? Both Genyu and Emperor Jinming were stunned for a moment when they looked at Chu Qingyu's slowly approaching figure. The most important thing is that they can all clearly feel that today's Empress seems to be slightly different. Nai Chen, I must let you show your foxtail. No matter what, I never believe that the Empress really has any feelings for you. After giving Nai Chen a fierce and angry look, Genyu turned his attention to Chu Qingyu again. But as the Empress got closer, she felt more and more that something was wrong. The Empresses of the past always carried a fearsome majesty on their bodies. Even just walking on the road, the cold majesty of the Emperor that is faintly exuded is enough to make all living beings surrender, awe and astonishment, and dare not have the slightest disobedient thought. But at this moment, although there is still a sense of coldness and independence from the world, Chu Qingyu's brisk steps seemed to carry a trace of undetectable joy and a touch of shyness at the same time. He glanced to the left at the sweaty disciples basking in the scorching sun, and to the right at the Emperor Jinming and Genyu who had just arrived here. But soon, Chu Qingyu looked at Nai Chen. There was a color in his clear eyes that was completely different from anyone he looked at. He held the blue and white porcelain bowl in his hand and walked slowly towards the depths. The Empress is here again. At this moment, even the disciples of Tianyun Palace were stunned and froze on the spot. Although they had made jokes and made speculations yesterday, they obviously did not expect that the Empress would come to participate in training again. More importantly, he actually held a bowl in his hand. What is in the blue and white porcelain bowl today is cool ice water, not mung bean porridge. But even so, everyone's eyes couldn't help but be attracted. At this moment, even the air seemed to be stagnant. Countless eyes wanted to see whose hands this bowl of water would be handed over to in the end. Looking at the Empress's steps, everyone's heart seemed to beat with the steps. But soon, as Chu Qingyu passed through the crowd, countless people fell into despair. Not him, not him, not myself. The footsteps of the Empress are still walking farther away. Accompanied by the elegant fragrance, the beautiful figure passed through the crowd and came directly to Nai Chen. I felt that so many eyes seemed to be watching me, even though I tried my best to show a bit of cold and arrogant majesty. At this moment, Chu Qingyu still couldn't help but feel a little shy. She has begun to worry about what will happen when her relationship with Nai Chen is officially announced. She was already so embarrassed now, and it was hard for Chu Qingyu to imagine how embarrassing the situation would be then. But she knew very well that it was time for her to take this step. Well, I don't need to drink the mung bean water. In such a hot weather, my wife, you should keep it to yourself. Recalling the mung bean porridge that made him vomit blood yesterday, Nai Chen felt a chill in his back and quickly wanted to refuse. But when he looked into the bowl, he suddenly noticed that the blue and white porcelain bowl in the Empress hand contained ice water without any extra seasoning. Under the sunshine of autumn, the cool temperature is quite nice. Nai Chen couldn't help but stop when he touched the cold porcelain bowl. My wife finally stopped cooking dark dishes this time. But when she heard Nai Chen wanted to refuse, Chu Qingyu's understanding was completely different. Lowering her head slightly shyly, she quickly explained. I got up a little late this morning and didn't have time to make mung bean porridge, so I had to bring ice water temporarily. You, don't think you dislike it? It seemed that she was blaming herself for not being able to make mung bean porridge in time. Chu Qingyu's cheeks were slightly red, and her eyes seemed a little guilty. How is that possible? Nai Chen immediately objected. The ice water, which is not mixed with other toxins, is countless times better than the deadly mung bean porridge that the Empress cooked under her skill. Honey, you don't have to make mung bean porridge anymore. In fact, I still prefer to drink the most ordinary ice water. With that said, Nai Chen took the ice water from Chu Qingyu's hand directly. And, he drank it all in one gulp without hesitation. Gudong, gudong, gudong. As Nai Chen drank a whole bowl of ice water boldly, Chu Qingyu suddenly felt a warm current rushing through her heart. I couldn't help but feel moved in my heart. How could ice water be as delicious as mung bean porridge made by yourself? But Nai Chen drank it all in one gulp without hesitation, which clearly showed that Nai Chen did not want to drink this bowl of water. But I just want to relax and not blame myself for not having time to make mung bean porridge. This kind of behavior that was not stated outright, but the deep meaning behind it was only visible to him. Thinking of Nai Chen's true thoughts, Chu Qingyu, who had always been in a rock-steady state of mind, couldn't help but feel warmth in her heart. Unexpectedly, he actually thinks about himself so much. Raising his head, his water-cut eyes stared at Nai Chen, as if there were a few different emotions floating around. Chu Qingyu also made a secret decision in her heart. When Nai Chen trains his disciples in the future, he must get up early and cook a bowl of cool and delicious mung bean porridge in time. As long as he can drink a bowl during training, it will definitely be of great help to Nai Chen's strength. Taking the porcelain bowl from Nai Chen's hand, Chu Qingyu looked at him shyly. But soon, he shifted his gaze in a panic, and his voice was soft. Then you continue to train, and I will leave first. Yes, thank you, my wife. After finally drinking the ice water without lethality, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile at the pitiful red cheeks of the Empress. This time he drank it all in one gulp, showing his extreme support for sending ice water. Presumably, the Empress will never send dark dishes such as mung bean porridge again. But no matter what it was, he didn't expect Chu Qingyu to come here twice to send it to him. Looking at the back figure who left with a little embarrassment, Nai Chen couldn't help but smile slightly. The Empress seemed cold, but no one knew that the Empress's heart was warmer than anyone else. I will leave first, you remember to practice well with Nai Chen, and don't be lazy. After glancing coldly at the disciples of Tianyun Hall, the imperial power floated in the air, and Chu Qingyu turned and left. Looking at the flawless figure, the disciples felt their noses sour. Why was it Nai Chen who was able to drink the water personally delivered by the Empress today? Why did it always feel that the Empress had two completely different attitudes towards him and Nai Chen? This is simply different treatment. How is it possible? Looking at the scene in front of him, Genyu was completely stunned. Even a fool could see the extremely ambiguous and intimate relationship between the two just now. In other words, the Empress and Nai Chen, really. In an instant, her eyes became a little empty. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 400. As if he had been severely traumatized, Genyu stumbled and fell to the ground. She knew exactly what the scene before her meant. He was just pretending to be the future Taoist companion of Emperor Jinming. In fact, nothing real happened at all. But when the Empress delivered water just now, the close relationship between the two was enough to prove that the relationship between Nai Chen and the Empress was infinitely more ambiguous than he imagined. That's the Empress, how is that possible? Genyu turned to look at Emperor Jinming, trying to get a different answer. But all he saw was that Emperor Jinming shook his head helplessly, as if he had known about this matter for a long time. Looking at the scene in front of him, Emperor Jinming began to feel a little unbearable, and finally said without tears, "It's not good for you to provoke anyone, you have to provoke that big brother Nai Chen. It's okay now, even I will be tortured severely." Emperor Jinming had fantasized about being given water by a beautiful girl countless times. But that's fine, it didn't happen to me. She saw that the cold and arrogant Empress, who was awe-inspiring to countless people, actually delivered water to Nai Chen herself. Although they didn't say much, there were secret glances between the two of them, and there was a deep affection between them. That invisible sweet feeling made him suddenly feel as if he had been tortured to pieces, and that his life had been in vain. "Let's go, I don't want to stay in a place like Tianyun Palace anymore." Emperor Jinling used his spiritual energy to pull up Genyu's body, not even wanting to touch her at all. Such a strong contrast made Genyu almost cry. "But Emperor, when you come here, shouldn't you have other things to do? I originally wanted to ask Nai Chen how he learned the secret method of my sect, 10,000 sword domain. But in this situation, it's still a big deal. Should I step forward and let him know that I was treated like a dog just now? I understand. It's all me who talks bad. I deserve to be beaten." As the Taoist companions of the great emperor, Emperor Jinming and Genyu were tortured to pieces, as if they were afraid that Nai Chen would find them in embarrassment. While no one was paying attention, he hurriedly slipped down the mountain as fast as he could. "Ahem, just pretend you didn't see what happened just now. After the warm-up, let's start a slightly more advanced training, let's run 20,000 meters. Seeing Chu Qingyu's figure disappearing into the distance, Nai Chen turned around and looked at the disciples. 20,000 meters? Brother Nai, please spare your life. Training has started again, even though it is known that it will be of great benefit to improve strength. But the disciples who had just suffered a heavy mental blow had completely lost the energy to work hard before. 1, 2, 3, 4. Even the familiar slogan seemed quite decadent and weak. There is no other way. After all, who has the strength to run after just eating a lot of dog food? The super sweetness was so intense that they couldn't hold back their tears and wanted to cry. 1, 2, 3, 4. The voice of the slogan seemed to be increasingly mixed with a bit of heartbreak. I don't know how many meters I ran, and as the sun set again, I finally got through the afternoon. For monks, one afternoon should be considered extremely short compared to the vicissitudes of life. But for some reason, everyone felt that this afternoon was so difficult today. Finally, when Nai Chen announced that the training was over, all the disciples ran away in tears, exhausted both physically and mentally. Of course, compared to the physical fatigue, the severe damage their young minds suffered today is obviously more difficult to repair. Are you being tortured like this? Are you not very capable of taking blows? Looking at the disappeared figures, Nai Chen couldn't help but reveal a helpless smile. It seems that it is time for Tianyun Palace to find an opportunity to reform. At least the prohibition on love in the sect rules should be removed as soon as possible. Otherwise, when one day soon comes, when I and the Empress openly show off their affection, won't these disciples all feel inferior and fight for the land with their heads? Taking advantage of the afterglow of the setting sun, Nai Chen arrived in front of Tianyun Palace. The sky has become very dark, and only a wisp of the fading sun shines into the hall. And in the reflection of the afterglow, deep in the hall, Chu Qingyu's cool cheeks were filled with seriousness as she continued to write documents. After returning from the imperial mausoleum and preventing this catastrophe, all the major sects breathed a sigh of relief and temporarily let go of the fear in their hearts. But only the empress was a little tired. In order to prepare for the upcoming conference, Chu Qingyu first had to organize and write down the major events that happened in the imperial mausoleum and the underworld. After all, none of the other great emperors had been able to enter the depths of the imperial mausoleum and the underworld. Only he and Nai Chen knew about these major events that could shock the world. And besides that, facing the sects from all directions, Chu Qingyu had always looked down upon them coldly and condescendingly. Even if a general meeting was held, she would never be able to write the decree with her own hands. But this time, it seemed to be to show the importance they attached to this conference. Chu Qingyu actually took the trouble to write edicts and documents for various major sects. If other sects saw that this document was written by the empress herself, they would definitely be shocked and flattered. After all, so far, almost no one has seen anything that could attract the empress' attention and write it herself. Of course, it is impossible for others to know the truth why the empress attaches so much importance to this time. Only Nai Chen can guess the secret so far. Nai Chen walked in quietly without making any sound. He used the concealment technique to hide all his aura and quietly walked around to the back of the main hall. It wasn't until she approached Chu Qingyu, who was writing seriously at the desk, that she suddenly revealed her aura, and her arm slowly wrapped around her soft and slender waist. The cool and soft touch came, this excellent hand feeling, I don't know how many times better than a pillow. Suddenly, her slender waist was gently hugged, and Chu Qingyu couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Because Nai Chen had reached the imperial realm and his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. In addition, he had just written seriously and relaxed his vigilance, so he was completely unaware of Nai Chen's arrival. It happened so suddenly that Chu Qingyu couldn't even make a cool gesture, and her cheeks were slightly red. Why did you suddenly? She glanced at Nai Chen with a slightly resentful look, but found that Nai Chen seemed to be hugging her a little tighter. Honey, you have worked hard these past 2 days. Nai Chen spoke slowly, and the warm wind of his words blew over Chu Qingyu's ingot-like ears. The delicate little ears instantly turned reddish, and they couldn't help but tremble slightly. Well enough. Like a frightened little rabbit, he was afraid of being so close and accidentally showing his embarrassment under Nai Chen's attack. Chu Qingyu quickly put down the pen in her hand and tried to escape in a panic. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 401. However, I don't know whether it was because Nai Chen's hand holding his waist was a little harder, or because Chu Qingyu took half a step back and didn't really mean to get out of the way. After a while, Chu Qingyu was still gently held in his arms without changing her posture. Moreover, that alluring face that could make a woman close her eyes in shame was even more blushing. Damn it, I always feel that you are getting bolder and bolder. As if to cover up the panic in her heart, Chu Qingyu said in a low voice. Indeed, from the very beginning of the date, when they were treating each other as if they were guests, to later holding hands with just hooking fingers, now, Nai Chen has cuddled like an old couple without any scruples, like a doll. In this short year, Chu Qingyu never expected that such a big change would happen. Honey, you already know that you give me mung bean porridge and water during training. Isn't it natural for me to change something? However, Nai Chen responded with a smile as if he was prepared. When she mentioned this matter, Chu Qingyu's cheeks couldn't help but blush. When Nai Chen trained the male disciples of Tianyun Palace, she originally planned to just watch them from a distance. But I inadvertently remembered that I overheard a conversation between female disciples in the past, and it seemed that a disciple had once said something. I heard that under the scorching sun, a bowl of cool water is given. It is the most obscure, but also the most heartwarming way to express love. Although Chu Qingyu had an idea at that time, she was completely embarrassed to actually do it. But seeing Nai Chen training his disciples in an orderly manner, even her cold heart couldn't help but feel a throb in her heart. Because Chu Qingyu knew very well that it would not be long before the day when he would announce it to the whole world. So even though she was quite ashamed, she still cooked mung bean porridge with her own hands and gave it to Nai Chen, causing an uproar in the entire Tianyun palace. After all, even if they couldn't believe it after making such a move, many disciples had already started to feel doubts in their hearts. Twice in a row, their hearts were shaken so much that they could hardly turn their heads. But even so, then, that was purely an accident. I didn't send it on purpose. In fact, I originally wanted to give it to other disciples, but I saw that your position seemed to be the hottest place, so I reluctantly gave it to you. Yes, that's it. Chu Qingyu's hard words were so high-sounding that they seemed to make sense. Honey, do you think I will believe it? However, Nai Chen had long been used to the duplicitous empress. After thinking about it, he quickly seized this opportunity, smiled slightly, and asked. But what should I do if what you say is false, wife? Fake? If it's fake. Chu Qingyu felt a little guilty. But the dignity of being an emperor made it impossible for her to admit defeat. If it's fake, it'll be a big deal to me, this emperor. Compensate you with something else. The voice gradually became weaker. What else? Well, I haven't thought about it yet. How about you let me think about it? You. Wait, what are you going to do? In the middle of speaking, Chu Qingyu suddenly realized that something was wrong. The arms surrounding his waist slowly became tighter. Not only that, on her delicate little ears, she could clearly feel that the temperature of Nai Chen's breath seemed to become slightly hotter. This feeling instantly reminded her of something. With a peach-shaped face, Chu Qingyu quickly tried to struggle. But the body was so soft that even his hands could not pull it out. It wasn't because of what Nai Chen did, but because Chu Qingyu suddenly realized something. His resistance seemed to be just tender resentment, with no real intention to take action. After all, the last interaction on the flowers beside the Nahi bridge was accidentally interrupted. Honey, I have just reached the realm of the great emperor. This time, don't think about winning like before. The door of Tianyun Palace slowly closed with a gust of breeze. Nai Chen's voice came from her ears, which immediately made Chu Qingyu blush. Hey, why don't we wait until we get back to the palace? This emperor is currently writing an edict, and it belongs to the Blossom Saint. Follow Chu Qingyu's coquettish eyes. Sure enough, the envelope on the desk was signed to be addressed to the Flower Saint. Moreover, Chu Qingyu's 3-character name has already been signed with 2 characters, and only the last month is left to be completed. It turns out it belongs to the saint, so there's no problem. However, after hearing that it was for the Blossom Saint, Nai Chen seemed to be even more unconcerned. After all, when it comes to eating dog food, the Flower Saintess is the one who eats the most in Lanchuan continent today. Moreover, she knows all the secrets that need to be known, so who cares about writing an ordinary letter? These envelopes were made in advance, and this is the only one. Chu Qingyu was still trying to find other reasons. It doesn't matter. However, Nai Chen smiled slightly and didn't care at all. Even if you have just arrived at the realm of the great emperor, there is no need to be in such a hurry. Chu Qingyu's eyes were dim, as if she had never seen Nai Chen in such a hurry. Of course, I won't be bullied by you, my wife, after reaching this level. Of course, I will take revenge with my hard-earned strength. You. Damn it. Hey, let's see if you can continue to be tough next time, Empress. Chu Qingyu was so angry that she said coquettishly. Don't you know whether I am tough or not? Well, when did I know? Nai Chen was obviously stunned for a moment. You have tried it before. Nai Chen. Listening to Chu Qingyu's shameful and angry voice, which was as thin as a mosquito, Nai Chen was silent for a long time. Although it was true. But the Empress, as expected, drove farther and farther, and gradually became more skilled. Who could have imagined that the Empress, who looked cold and indifferent, was actually as good as the god of driving in a Kina mountain? This time, it was you, my wife, who teased me with words first, so you can't blame me. Nai Chen smiled subtly. On the curtain in front of the desk, with the help of the candlelight, you can vaguely see two figures hugging each other, slowly approaching the desk. The white clothes are gently taken off, and the candlelight reflects the swaying figure. Even if the door of Tianyun Palace is closed. But if someone passes by, you can hear it, like a gentle voice, beautiful and moving. Not only that, the desk made of ancient wood, which the Empress usually uses, actually makes a creaking and shaking sound. Hearing it, the birds on the tree spread their wings and hurriedly flew away.